Caregiver hears doctor speaking in German. Her response moves everyone in the room. Jessica Miller never imagined that her years caring for her German grandmother would become her secret strength at Mercy General Hospital in Denver. The 30-year-old had worked as a caregiver for 2 years, always dedicated and respectful, but she faced situations that left her increasingly distressed. It was on a typical Tuesday morning that Dr. Heinrich Schmidt, the head of the geriatric wing, passed her in the hallway while speaking on the phone in German. Jessica was carrying breakfast trays when she heard words that made her heart race. The doctor was laughing as he told someone on the other end that the American caregiver was completely incompetent and questioned how such a simple person had gotten the job. "This American caregiver is completely incompetent," he said, smiling while looking directly at Jessica. "I don't understand how such a simple person got this job." Jessica felt her face grow hot, but kept walking as if nothing had happened. The words echoed in her mind. Incompetent, simple. She had understood every cruel syllable, but couldn't show it. Dr. Schmidt had no idea the young caregiver had grown up hearing German at home, learning from her grandmother Ingrid, who had fled Germany during World War II. In the following months, the humiliation became routine. Dr. Schmidt would always speak German with other foreign doctors visiting the hospital, making spiteful comments about Jessica right in front of her. He called her lazy, said she wasn't educated enough to care for European patients, and even suggested she should be cleaning bathrooms instead of caring for people. Jessica swallowed her tears and continued her work with even more dedication. She took special care of Mrs. Heidi Fischer, a 78-year-old German patient who had been in a semi-vegetative state for 3 years. The woman was the only patient who never had visitors, and Jessica spent extra hours talking to her in English, combing her white hair and massaging her hands. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Fischer," Jessica would say every day as she entered the room. "I brought your favorite flowers today, fresh violets from the hospital garden." Dr. T. Schmidt always mocked this dedication, saying in German to his colleagues that Jessica was wasting precious time on someone who would never wake up again. During medical meetings, he proposed transferring Mrs. Fischer to a lower ward, joking about saving resources on lost causes. "It's a waste of time," he muttered when he saw Jessica caring for the patient. She will never wake up again." Nurse Margaret Johnson, a 55-year-old veteran who had worked at the hospital for 20 years, began to notice Jessica's silent suffering. One afternoon, she confronted the young woman in the staff locker room. "Jessica, what's going on? You're not the same as before," Margaret said, sitting beside her on the bench. "It's nothing, Margaret. I'm just a little tired," Jessica replied, avoiding the nurse's gaze. "Don't lie to me, girl. I've worked here for 2 decades, and I know when someone's hurting. It's Dr. Schmidt, isn't it?" Jessica just shook her head, saying it wasn't worth talking about. Margaret insisted she should report any kind of abuse, but Jessica feared losing the job that supported her sick mother at home. That night during her shift, Jessica was alone with Mrs. Fischer and poured out her heart in English about her difficult childhood. She shared how she had lost her father at 12 and how her grandmother Ingrid had been crucial in raising her, teaching her not just German, but also values of dignity and respect. "You remind me so much of my grandmother Ingrid," Jessica whispered, adjusting the patient's pillow. She also had those kind blue eyes. The next day, Dr. Heinrich discovered that Jessica was using more expensive hygiene products in caring for Mrs. Heidi. He publicly reprimanded her in front of the entire staff, shouting in German that she was stealing from the hospital to impress a vegetative patient. "She is stealing from the hospital to impress a vegetative patient," he yelled, pointing his finger at Jessica. "This is ridiculous." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The humiliation was witnessed by dozens of employees, but no one besides Jessica understood the cruelest words. The young woman kept her head down as tears streamed down her face, but said nothing in her defense. During her next shift, she found old photos in Mrs. Heidi's medical records. The images showed an elegant, smiling woman posing with a happy family. One photo stood out, a young Mrs. Heidi embracing a small child with the same blue eyes. "You were so beautiful," Jessica murmured, looking at the photographs. "And this little one must be your grandchild." The images moved her deeply, and she began imagining what Mrs. Heidi's life had been like before her current state. Supervisor Barbara Wilson caught her crying in the room and threatened to report her for emotional instability. "Jessica, you need to be more professional. You can't get emotionally involved with patients," Barbara said, crossing her arms. "I'm sorry, Supervisor. It won't happen again," Jessica replied, quickly wiping away her tears. Dr. Heinrich used the situation to suggest Jessica's dismissal in the next meeting, arguing in German that she was too emotional and unfit for the hospital environment. 2 weeks later, Dr. Michael Kaufmann arrived at the hospital, a young resident of German descent who had studied medicine in Germany. He was impressed by the meticulous care Jessica gave her patients, especially Mrs. Heidi. "You take such tender care of her," Michael remarked, watching Jessica arrange flowers in the room. "She reminds me of my grandmother," Jessica replied simply. Dr. Heinrich tried to warn Michael in German not to associate with lower-ranking staff, but the young resident began observing their interactions more closely. He noticed how tense Jessica became whenever the boss spoke German, though she never showed any sign of understanding. During an emergency procedure, Dr. Heinrich made a mistake that nearly cost an elderly patient their life. He mixed up dosages and administered the wrong medication. Jessica, who was assisting, immediately noticed the error. "Doctor, perhaps we should double-check this medication," she suggested discreetly. Heinrich ignored her completely, but Jessica politely insisted, pointing to the medical chart. Her intervention saved the patient's life, but the doctor, unaware that she had shielded him from a grave mistake, continued humiliating her in German in the days that followed. Michael witnessed the whole situation and was outraged by the ingratitude. He confronted his superior in private, but was threatened with having his residency revoked if he kept defending just a caregiver. "Dr. Heinrich, I don't think the way you treat Jessica is fair," Michael said bravely. "You're too young to understand hospital hierarchy," Heinrich replied coldly. "I suggest you focus on your studies." Meanwhile, Mrs. Heidi began showing small signs of awareness when Jessica sang lullabies in English. Her fingers twitched slightly, and sometimes her eyes seemed to follow the caregiver's voice. The other professionals ignored these signs, but Jessica intensified the stimuli. Dr. Heinrich discovered this and accused her of creating false hopes for the patient's non-existent family. He ordered her to stop any additional stimulation immediately. "She is creating false hopes," he said to Michael. "That is unprofessional and cruel." Jessica secretly disobeyed, visiting Mrs. Ingrid outside her work hours. She brought small personal items and continued speaking in English, telling stories about the United States and her own life. During an emergency at night when doctors were short-staffed, Jessica had to assist with a complex procedure. She surprised the entire team with her technical knowledge, anticipating the doctor's needs and acting with precision. "How did you know we needed that medication?" asked a nurse, impressed. "My grandmother taught me a lot about natural medicine and basic care," Jessica replied modestly. Dr. Heinrich was furious at being outshone by a caregiver. That same night, he called a group of German investors who funded part of the hospital, discussing how to cut costs by firing older employees. "We need to cut costs," he said on the phone. "These old employees are too expensive and inefficient." Jessica happened to walk by during the conversation and heard every word. He planned to fire half the cleaning and caregiving staff before Christmas, mothers who would lose their livelihoods during the hardest time of the year. She was tormented, knowing she could warn her colleagues, but that would reveal she understood German. The anguish consumed her for days as she watched Margaret, Barbara, and other co-workers laboring unaware of the bleak future awaiting them. Jessica began having nightmares about her grandmother Ingrid, who appeared in dreams asking why she wasn't using her gift of language to help others. The memory of her grandmother telling stories of surviving the war by keeping secrets weighed heavily on her conscience. "My dear Jessica," Ingrid said in her dreams, "sometimes we must speak to protect those we love." During a conversation with Mrs. Ingrid, Jessica poured out her dilemma. To her surprise, the patient lightly squeezed her hand, as if trying to encourage her. "Mrs. Ingrid, can you hear me?" Jessica whispered, emotional. The patient's eyes moved toward Jessica, and for the first time in 3 years, Mrs. Ingrid tried to form words with her lips. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing up. Jessica ran to call the medical team, but when they returned to the room, Mrs. Ingrid had reverted to her previous state. Dr. Heinrich scolded her harshly for a false alarm, saying in German that she was hysterical and seeing things that weren't there. "She is hysterical and sees things that aren't there," he told Michael. "Perhaps we should transfer her to psychiatry." The suggestion of sending Jessica to psychiatry was the last straw. Michael decided he could no longer stay silent and began secretly recording Dr. Heinrich's conversations in German, planning to report him to the board. That night, Jessica came home to find her mother, Patricia, waiting with hot tea and cookies. "Sweetheart, you've gotten so thin." "And those sad eyes?" Patricia asked, worried. "Just tired, Mom." "Work has been tough," Jessica lied. "Your grandmother Ingrid always said lying to protect others is noble, but lying to protect yourself is cowardice," Patricia said gently. Her mother's words echoed in Jessica's mind all night. She remembered all the stories her grandmother had told about the courage needed to do what's right, even when it's hard. The next day, Jessica arrived at the hospital determined to take action. She found Margaret in the locker room and was about to share the layoff plans when an emergency interrupted their conversation. Mrs. Ingrid had suffered a respiratory crisis overnight, and her condition was deteriorating rapidly. Jessica rushed to the room and found the patient conscious, but very weak. "Jessica," Mrs. Ingrid whispered with difficulty, "you always here?" The patient's faint but clear voice made Jessica cry with emotion. It was the first time in 3 years that Mrs. Ingrid had spoken. Dr. Heinrich arrived immediately, skeptical about the situation. "This is impossible," he murmured, performing basic neurological tests. To everyone's surprise, Mrs. Ingrid responded to simple commands and even smiled when she saw Jessica. "Doctor," Heinrich began asking questions in German, testing the patient's cognitive functions. "What is your name?" he asked. "Ingrid Fischer," she replied weakly. He continued the test, commenting in German to Michael that it was just a temporary muscle reflex and that the patient would return to her previous state within hours. "This is only a temporary muscle reflex," he said. "She will return to her previous condition in a few hours." That was when Mrs. Ingrid squeezed Jessica's hand and whispered the caregiver's name in perfect German, the same name Jessica repeated every day during her care. "Jessica, my dear Jessica," the patient said, looking directly into the young woman's eyes. Dr. Heinrich was stunned. He asked in German how the patient knew the caregiver's name, since in the records she was only listed as Patient Fischer and had never received visitors. "How do you know her name? You never had visitors," Heinrich questioned, confused. It was then that Jessica, trembling with emotion and tears in her eyes, made the decision that would change everything. She looked directly at Dr. Heinrich and replied in perfect German, "I know her name because I have been caring for her like a granddaughter for 2 years, doctor." Silence filled the room as everyone processed that Jessica had understood every insult, every humiliation, every cruel word spoken over the past months. "Doctor." Heinrich paled as he remembered all the offenses he had uttered. Jessica continued speaking in German, her voice choked but firm. "My grandmother Ingrid came to America as a war refugee and taught me the German language with stories of hope, not hate. Every German word you used to humiliate me was a word my grandmother used to show me love." Michael discreetly recorded the confession, having suspected the situation for weeks. Margaret and Barbara stood speechless, finally understanding why Jessica always tensed up when Heinrich spoke German. Mrs. Ingrid, now fully conscious, held Jessica's hand tightly and said in German, "She is an angel, doctor. This young woman has treated me every day like her own grandmother." With tears streaming down her face, Jessica revealed she had heard the layoff plans and could no longer stay silent while her hard-working colleagues were unjustly dismissed. "I heard your plans to fire all the older employees before Christmas," she said, staring straight at Heinrich. "These women have families to feed." Dr. Heinrich tried to defend himself, but Jessica continued. "Caregiving is the noblest profession there is, Doctor. It's about dignity, respect, and love for others. Something you never understood despite all your medical training, Mrs. Ingrid, her voice weak but determined, said that Jessica was her savior, and that she had recognized in her the same kindness her own granddaughter had before leaving for another country. "My granddaughter Emma went to Canada 10 years ago," Mrs. Ingrid murmured. "I saw her again in Jessica." The revelation explained why Mrs. Heidi never had visitors and why she had responded so well to Jessica's care. The patient had found in the young caregiver the family connection she had lost. Michael showed the video he had recorded to Supervisor Barbara, who immediately alerted the hospital board. The recording showed not only the confession in German, but also several previous instances of emotional abuse. "This is unbelievable," said Barbara, watching the video. "How did he think he could get away with this?" Employees who had suffered in silence began speaking up about other discriminatory situations. The janitor Sarah shared how Heinrich always treated her disrespectfully, and the nursing technician Robert reported similar episodes. The board launched a full investigation into workplace harassment and discrimination. Dr. Heinrich was immediately suspended while the case was investigated. Jessica received dozens of job offers from other hospitals, but she chose to stay to continue caring for Mrs. Heidi. During the patient's recovery, an even more surprising revelation came to light. Mrs. Heidi, now fully conscious, revealed she too had been keeping a linguistic secret. "Jessica, I need to tell you something," Mrs. Heidi said in perfect English. "I always understood everything you said to me." The young caregiver was stunned. Mrs. Heidi explained she had learned English years ago when her granddaughter Emma dated an American, and that she had remained conscious for a long time but couldn't communicate due to psychological trauma from losing her family. "When Emma moved to Canada and stopped visiting me, I fell into deep depression. The doctors thought I was in a vegetative state, but I was just lost." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now continuing. The truth was, Mrs. Heidi had given up on living when she felt abandoned. Her daily conversations with Jessica in English had been her only connection to the world, and the young caregiver's genuine affection had slowly brought her back to life. "Your stories about your grandmother Ingrid reminded me of my own happy memories," Mrs. Heidi said, holding Jessica's hands. "You gave me back my will to live." The board's investigation revealed Dr. Heinrich had committed several irregularities beyond workplace harassment. He manipulated medical reports to justify patient transfers, received illegal commissions from German pharmaceutical suppliers, and had created a scheme to cut costs at the expense of employee well-being. Michael became a key ally in the investigation, providing additional evidence he had collected for weeks. His courage in confronting his superior was recognized by the board. "You did the right thing, Dr. Michael," said the hospital director. "We need doctors like you, who put ethics above hierarchy." The case gained media attention when a Denver News Network journalist learned about the story through a hospital employee. The report highlighted the importance of reporting power abuses and healthcare workers' dedication. Jessica was interviewed and spoke about how her grandmother Ingrid had shaped her both linguistically and morally. "My grandmother always said knowledge only has value when used to help others," Jessica said in the interview. "She taught me that staying silent in the face of injustice makes you complicit." The story inspired other victims of workplace harassment in regional hospitals to come forward. A support group was created for healthcare workers who had suffered discrimination. Mrs. Heidi insisted on formally appointing Jessica as her personal caregiver, paying her a fair wage that allowed the young woman to better care for her mother Patricia. She also named Jessica in her will as the beneficiary of part of her estate, recognizing her as the daughter she never had. Dr. Heinrich was fired and lost his medical license in the United States due to unethical conduct. He tried to return to Germany, but the repercussions of the case had reached there, making it difficult for him to find work. Michael was promoted and took on some of the responsibilities of the geriatric wing, implementing new protocols for compassionate care. He and Jessica developed an exemplary professional partnership, always prioritizing patient well-being. Jessica taught me that medicine isn't just science, it's also compassion, Michael said during a staff meeting. Margaret was appointed head nursing supervisor, and one of her first initiatives was creating a language training program for staff, recognizing cultural diversity as one of the hospital's greatest assets. Barbara implemented an anonymous reporting system for workplace harassment, ensuring situations like Jessica's would never happen again. 6 months after the incident, Mrs. Heidi received an unexpected call. It was Emma, her granddaughter, who had seen the news story online and decided to reconnect with her grandmother. "Grandma, forgive me for abandoning you," Emma said, crying over the phone. "I saw the report and realized how selfish I'd been." Mrs. Heidi arranged a special meeting at the hospital, where Emma met Jessica in person. The German-Canadian granddaughter was moved by the dedication the American caregiver had shown. "You took better care of my grandmother than I did, her own flesh and blood," Emma said, hugging Jessica. "Family isn't just blood," Jessica replied. "It's love, care, and presence." Emma decided to move back to the United States to be closer to her grandmother, but kept Jessica as the official caregiver, acknowledging that their bond was special and irreplaceable. Mercy General Hospital became a regional model for compassionate care, attracting visits from professionals in other states eager to learn from the new protocols implemented after Jessica's case. The board established the Jessica Miller Award to recognize staff annually for exceptional dedication to patients, regardless of academic background or position. During the award ceremony, Jessica gave an emotional speech about the importance of treating everyone with dignity, no matter their background or social status. "My grandmother Ingrid taught me that we are all equal in pain and joy," she told a packed audience. "It doesn't matter what language we speak or where we come from. What matters is how we treat one another." Mrs. Heidi, now fully recovered and living in an apartment near the hospital, became a volunteer in the geriatric wing, helping other elderly patients who received no family visits. "I've learned my experience can help others not give up on life," she said, while organizing recreational activities for patients. Jessica and Mrs. Heidi's story inspired a mentorship program where volunteer staff adopted patients without families to give them special attention. Michael specialized in geriatrics, dedicating his career to elderly care after learning from Jessica. "She showed me that medicine is a calling, not just a job," he reflected in a medical journal interview. The case also led to a revision of the hospital's hiring policies, ensuring cultural diversity was valued and multilingual staff were properly recognized. Jessica began offering German lessons to interested staff, creating a more inclusive environment prepared to serve foreign patients. "Shared knowledge is multiplied knowledge," she would always say whenever someone thanked her for the classes. Patricia, Jessica's mother, was immensely proud of her daughter and often told the story to neighbors and friends, always emotional. "My Jessica has always been special, but now the whole world sees it," Patricia would say with tears of pride. Her grandmother Ingrid, though she had passed years earlier, seemed present in every decision Jessica made. The young woman kept a photo of her grandmother in her hospital locker, reminding herself daily of the lessons she had learned. A year after the incident, Jessica was invited to speak at a national caregivers conference, where she shared her experience and inspired hundreds of professionals in the field. "Every patient is a unique story, deserving of respect and kindness," she told the packed auditorium. "Our role goes beyond physical care. We are guardians of human dignity." The impact of her speech was so great that Jessica received invitations to speak at other events, but she always prioritized her work at the hospital and her patients. Heidi Fisher wrote a book about her experience with Jessica's help, detailing how love and care could literally bring someone back to life. Awakening to Love: How an American Caregiver Saved Me became a regional bestseller, with all proceeds going to a fund supporting underprivileged caregivers. Emma opened a language school in Denver, specializing in German and English, always sharing the story of her grandmother and Jessica as an example of how languages can unite cultures. Mercy General Hospital received an international certification for excellence in compassionate care, recognized as a model for other healthcare institutions. Michael and Jessica developed an innovative geriatric care protocol that combined traditional medicine with personalized emotional attention, later adopted by other hospitals. Our approach proves that science and compassion are not opposites, but essential partners, Michael explained at medical conferences. Margaret Johnson created a mentorship program where experienced nurses guided new staff on the importance of compassionate care. Technique without love is empty, but love without technique is insufficient, she taught the younger generations. Barbara Wilson implemented monthly meetings where employees could voice concerns and suggestions, ensuring a more democratic and respectful work environment. Dr. Heinrich Schmidt tried to sue the hospital for defamation, but lost the case when further evidence of his misconduct came to light during the trial. The German community in the United States heard the story and invited Jessica to cultural events, honoring her as an ambassador of goodwill between peoples. "You honor your grandmother's memory and German culture with your kindness," the German consul said during a recognition ceremony. Jessica used her newfound visibility to advocate for better working conditions for caregivers nationwide, participating in public hearings and meetings with officials. "Caregivers are the front line of humanity in medicine," she argued in her speeches. "They deserve recognition and dignified working conditions." The story inspired a local production company to create a documentary about the case, which was shown in theaters and later on television, reaching millions of people. Heidi and Jessica became inseparable friends, with the elderly woman considering the young caregiver the granddaughter of her heart she had always wished to have close. "Fate brought us together at the right time," Heidi reflected during her daily walks with Jessica through the hospital gardens. Emma, now settled in the United States, was dating Michael, building a multilingual family that celebrated both German and American cultures. "Our family is proof that love knows no borders," Emma said in an interview about cultural integration. The Jessica Miller Award became one of the most prestigious honors in healthcare in Colorado, sought after by professionals across the state. Jessica continued working at the hospital, but now also led a training program in compassionate care, traveling throughout the US to train other professionals. "Every person we train is a seed of change planted," she explained about her new mission. Mrs. Patricia, finally cured of her chronic illness thanks to the best treatments Jessica could afford with her new salary, became a volunteer at the hospital, helping patients' families. "My daughter saved me in so many ways that now I want to help other families," Patricia said gratefully. The memory of grandmother Ingrid was honored with a plaque in the hospital garden, which read, "In memory of Ingrid Miller, who taught that knowledge only has value when used to love." End of story. And you? What did you think of this touching story? Do you believe Jessica made the right choice by revealing herself? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other inspiring stories like this one. Thank you so much for joining us.